It was a cold evening in Spring Hill when Emily sat on the porch, her knees pulled close to her chest, clutching an old photo of her brother Jason. The wind carried faint echoes of engines roaring in the distance, the kind that used to send her running into his arms. But this time, the porch was silent, and the house behind her was colder than ever. Everyone in town told her to let it go. That silence was safer. They didn't understand that silence had already stolen too much from her. Jason wasn't just a brother. He was the shield between her and the chaos that lurked beyond the borders of their small town. He'd left home with his leather jacket, joined the Iron Vultures, and became a name everyone whispered with fear. But that jacket came home alone one day, bloodied, ripped, and soaked in silence. The police said nothing. The gang said less. Her father never spoke about it again. Emily knew something wasn't right, but every time she asked, doors closed and hearts shut. At school, teachers watched her like glass, fragile, breakable, full of cracks. Friends avoided her gaze, afraid they'd drown in the grief they didn't understand. But there was something Emily held deep inside. Jason's last voice message. He sounded scared. He said someone was following him. Someone from within. The club. He begged her not to trust anyone. That voice haunted her dreams, but it also lit a fire inside her no one could smother. She started asking questions at the gas station where bikers used to gather, offering refills and pretending to be invisible. She memorized tattoos, bike numbers, and the strange way they exchanged glances when she walked by. Most said nothing. One old biker, with gray braids and eyes like rusted steel, told her, "Some ghosts ride forever, girl. Let them pass." But Emily was done letting things pass. She wanted names. She wanted answers. She wanted peace for Jason. Her mom begged her to stop. "They're dangerous, Emily. They don't forget and they don't forgive." But Emily had nothing left to lose. She wasn't scared of forgetting. She was scared of remembering nothing. Each night she wrote down what she learned. Club hierarchy, rival names, the ones who vanished, the ones who suddenly got rich. Her wall became a timeline of shadows. She could see it forming, a betrayal. But she needed proof. One night, she followed them. A backroad rally, beer and bonfires lighting the sky like war drums. She wore her brother's hoodie, tucked her hair under a cap, and slipped into the shadows. It was there she saw him, Razor, Jason's closest friend, laughing, alive, and wearing Jason's necklace. Her breath froze, her fists clenched, and that was the moment Emily stopped being a little sister. She became a reckoning. She confronted him the next day at the mechanic shop. "That's Jason's chain." Razor stared at her like she was a ghost. "It was passed down." "No," she said. "It was stolen." For a moment, something cracked in his face. Guilt, fear, something human. But then it vanished. "Walk away, Emily, before you become another memory." She didn't blink. "I already am one." Word spread fast in the biker underworld. The little sister wasn't backing down. Whispers turned into warnings. Old members started disappearing again. Her presence burned like a wound they couldn't stitch shut. She received threats, notes under her pillow, a brake line cut, her dog poisoned. But Emily didn't cry. She documented everything. She knew they were watching her, but she also knew someone inside wanted out. That someone was Ivy, a quiet waitress at the biker bar who always wore long sleeves even in summer. Emily noticed the bruises first, then the glances, then the shaking hands when Razor walked in. One evening, Ivy slipped a note into Emily's coat. It had an address. No name, just numbers. Emily went that night. What she found was a storage unit full of secrets. There were photos, Jason with blood. On his knuckles, Jason fighting someone behind the bar, Jason bruised but smiling. And there were documents, ledgers, fake identities, club payoffs, even police officers listed by name. Emily couldn't breathe. She took photos of everything. She finally had what she needed, but she also realized the price. The truth didn't come free. It came drenched in danger. She went to the sheriff, the only one she thought she could trust. He listened quietly, nodding, taking notes. But his eyes never left her face. And when she left, she saw Razor walking into the same building. Her blood ran cold. She'd made a mistake. She had no one to run to now. No one, except Ivy. But when she returned to the bar, Ivy was gone. Her locker empty. Her name scratched off the schedule. Another ghost. That night, Emily locked her door, backed up the files, and wrote a letter. If I disappear, this is who killed my brother, and who might kill me. She sent it to 3 journalists, 2 lawyers, and a biker from a rival club. She met online. Then she waited. She didn't cry. She didn't sleep. The wind carried engines again. Louder this time, closer. At 2:13 a.m., her window shattered. 2 men rushed in, black masks, gloves, no words. She ran, barefoot, bleeding, but alive. She hid in the woods behind her house, watching them ransack her room. She didn't run away. She took pictures, evidence. The next morning, the world changed. One of the journalists leaked the ledger online. Names, numbers, locations. Chaos erupted in Spring Hill. The iron vultures split. Some fled, some turned on each other. Razor vanished. And Emily? She stood at Jason's grave, holding his necklace in her hand. They told me to stay quiet, Jace, she whispered. But I didn't. And now, they'll never forget. The wind answered with the distant roar of engines. But this time, she didn't flinch. She just smiled. The town of Spring Hill didn't speak much about what happened that night. Windows were replaced, stories were edited. And when the news reporter showed up asking questions, people shrugged like nothing ever happened. It was as if silence had won again. Clean, quiet, undisturbed. But beneath every casual nod was a heartbeat running from the truth. Emily walked through the streets the next morning, bruised, her shoes muddy, and her eyes sharper than ever. People glanced but said nothing. Some pitied her, some feared her, but no one dared to ask how she was. Their silence wasn't sympathy, it was self-preservation. At the grocery store, the manager forced a smile and asked if she needed help reaching the top shelf. His voice cracked slightly when he saw the bruises on her arm. "You okay, sweetheart?" he whispered. "Peachy," Emily replied, gripping the box tighter than she needed to. He nodded like he understood, but he didn't. No one did. Pastor. Howard brought flowers to her porch, said a prayer, and left a tin of cookies like forgiveness could be baked. "God tests the strong, my child," he had said. But his eyes trembled when they met hers. He didn't ask what she had seen. He didn't want to know. Knowing was dangerous in Spring Hill. The mailman stopped delivering her letters directly. Instead, he left them in a bundle at the end of the driveway. His wave was brief, nervous, disappearing before she could wave back. Emily noticed people crossing the street when she approached. They smiled, but it was the kind that hoped she wouldn't speak. At school, the counselor asked her to come in for a wellness check. She smiled warmly, offered tea, and kept glancing at her laptop like she'd rather be anywhere else. "We all miss Jason," she said, as if missing someone erased the need for justice. Emily thanked her and left. The counselor sighed in relief, thinking she'd done her job. The sheriff's office had boarded windows from the protest the night the ledger went viral. Still, every officer inside wore forced calm like a badge. They joked louder, laughed longer, and when Emily entered, the laughter died. "We're still reviewing the files," one said without meeting her eyes. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. They were already unraveling. Razor's disappearance became a ghost tale overnight. Some said he fled to Mexico. Others claimed he was taken out by his own crew. Emily heard all the stories. But she knew what they were. Lies wrapped in distraction. The truth was too heavy for their tongues. It lived in the spaces between what they said and what they meant. Ivy's name was never mentioned again. It vanished from the bar, from town talk, from every whisper. When Emily asked one of the waitresses about her, the woman blinked too quickly and said, "She moved away." Her voice cracked halfway through. Emily didn't push. The cracks were enough. The iron vultures still roamed the outskirts, fewer, quieter, more cautious. They rode past her street sometimes, slower than before, engines soft like warnings. Emily watched from her window, expressionless. They didn't wave. Neither did she. The war wasn't over. It had just changed color. Her mother cooked more now. Casseroles, pies, things Jason used to love. But she never said his name. She placed dishes on the table with tight lips and empty eyes. When Emily thanked her, she'd nod and say, "Eat while it's hot." As if food could fill the hole silence left. Neighbors dropped off casseroles too. Some with cards that said, "Thinking of you," others with no note at all. Emily stacked them in the fridge, uneaten. Their kindness wasn't real. It was insurance, a way to avoid guilt, a way to feel good without getting involved. The town paper wrote an article titled, "Storm Passes Over Spring Hill." No mention of names, no mention of the gang, not even a word about the leaked documents. Just vague praise for resilience. Emily read it twice and burned it. Truth didn't live on that page. Fear did. At night, her phone buzzed with blocked numbers. No words, just silence, sometimes static. Once, the sound of a motorcycle engine revving for 7 seconds before cutting out. She didn't flinch anymore. They wanted her to be afraid, but she'd already walked through fire. Her old friends at school smiled like nothing had changed. "You look tired," one said. "You should take a break." As if exhaustion was the problem. As if pretending made her whole again. Emily smiled back, but her eyes said what her words didn't. She wasn't tired. She was transformed. She walked differently now, slower, heavier, like her feet carried the weight of everyone's silence. People noticed but never mentioned it. They only mentioned things that didn't matter. "Nice boots," one girl said. "New hairstyle?" Another tried. Emily nodded, played along. It was easier than honesty. The librarian asked if she needed help finding a book. Emily shook her head and headed to the back, pulling old newspapers from the archive section. She was looking for a pattern. Old disappearances, deaths ruled accidental, names that reappeared in Razor's ledger. She wasn't done. She was just quieter now. At the town diner, old men still played cards in the corner booth. One of them, grizzled and red-eyed, nodded at her as she passed. "Your brother was a good kid," he muttered. She paused. "Then why'd no one speak when he died?" The man blinked, looked down at his cards. "'Cause good kids don't always live long in bad places." Emily started journaling in code, her own language, numbers and symbols only. She could read. She hid the journals in different places, rotated them weekly. Paranoia wasn't madness. It was armor. She trusted no one. Not anymore. And especially not those who smiled too easily. In her dreams, Jason didn't speak anymore. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, chain swinging, wind in his hair, watching, waiting. Sometimes he nodded at her. Other times he turned away. She didn't know if it meant he was proud or warning her. Dreams had layers too. One day, a little boy rang her doorbell with a paper airplane in hand. "My dad said to give this to you." Emily took it. No return. Address. Just a drawing of a vulture with blood dripping from its beak. The boy smiled, unaware. She told him to run home and lock the door. She didn't report it. She documented it, printed a photo, pinned it to the back of her closet. Her wall was no longer just a timeline. It was a map, a monster, a living thing, and she was learning how to read its heart. Emily woke up to the sound of rain tapping softly against her window, each drop echoing the restless storm inside her. The town outside remained unchanged, wrapped in its usual quiet disguise, but Emily knew better. Beneath, every smile was a tangled web of fear and secrets. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the cracked photo of Jason, feeling the weight of unspoken words pressing down on her chest. The surface was calm, but inside, the pressure was building, threatening to burst. She wiped a tear before it could fall, masking her pain with a practiced calm. Downstairs, her mother moved silently, setting the breakfast table with mechanical precision. Emily's eyes caught the way her mother avoided looking at her directly, how the silence between them was louder than any conversation. The past weeks had carved invisible lines between them, lines made of fear, grief, and the things neither dared to say. The walls seemed to close in, each creak a reminder of what had been lost and what could never be spoken aloud. Emily felt isolated in her own home, surrounded by people who whispered but never really listened. Outside, neighbors went about their routines with rehearsed normalcy, avoiding Emily's gaze like a silent agreement that some things were better left untouched. At the grocery store, the clerk smiled too brightly when Emily approached, his eyes flickering with discomfort. "You okay?" he asked, voice low and uncertain. Emily nodded, knowing the answer would only open doors best left closed. Every glance carried an unspoken warning: stay quiet, don't stir the waters, or risk the storm that lay beneath. She walked away, her footsteps heavier with the burden of being both seen and unseen. School was no refuge. Hallways buzzed with whispers and sideways glances, the usual chatter replaced by a tense silence whenever Emily passed. Teachers offered empty platitudes, and friends drifted away, unsure how to bridge the gap between sympathy and fear. The counselor's office felt like a cage, a place where questions went to die beneath rehearsed smiles and forced concern. Emily sat there, hands clenched, heart pounding, pretending she was just another troubled teenager rather than the sister of a man caught in a deadly game. Even the local sheriff, the one person Emily hoped might be an ally, wore a mask of politeness that barely concealed his discomfort. Meetings were brief and bureaucratic, filled with promises that sounded like echoes in an empty room. Behind closed doors, whispered conversations hinted at alliances and threats, and Emily realized that the line between justice and silence was thinner than she'd imagined. Her fight was not just against the gang, it was against a town willing to protect itself at any cost. As days passed, Emily's resolve hardened. She kept a journal, a sanctuary where she poured her fears and frustrations, a place where the surface cracks could open wide and reveal the raw truth beneath. She mapped out the connections between the bikers, the corrupt officials, and the missing persons, each piece a thread in a dark tapestry she was determined to unravel. The deeper she dug, the more dangerous the path became. But she refused to be silenced. At night, dreams haunted her, a collage of faces and voices, some familiar, others sinister. Jason's presence lingered, sometimes guiding, sometimes warning. She awoke often, heart racing, the line between dream and reality blurred by the weight of grief and determination. Each morning, she faced the world anew, donning a mask of calm, while the fire inside refused to be extinguished. The surface might show quiet compliance, but Emily's spirit burned fiercely beneath. One afternoon, a letter arrived, slipped under her door without a name or explanation. Inside was a single phrase: "The truth rides with the fearless." Emily's breath caught. It was a challenge, an invitation, or perhaps a warning. She folded the note carefully, tucking it into her journal. This was no longer just about seeking answers. It was a battle for her own survival and the legacy of her brother. With every surface reaction she encountered, Emily knew she was one step closer to breaking through the silence and to a reckoning that no one in Spring Hill could Ignore. Emily sat alone in her dimly lit room, the walls closing in as memories crashed over her like a relentless tide. The distant roar of motorcycles echoed through the night, pulling her back to that fateful evening. The night everything changed. Her mind replayed every detail with cruel precision. The laughter, the threats, the moments when she wished she had spoken up but didn't. "Why didn't I say something?" she whispered to herself, the question a weight she carried in silence. Each "what if" was a blade cutting deeper into her heart, a reminder that silence can sometimes be the loudest scream. She remembered Jason's face that night, fierce, defiant, but also fragile beneath the hardened exterior. He had warned her, begged her not to get involved. "Stay quiet, Em," he'd said, voice low and urgent. But silence had never been an option for her. Not then, not now. The guilt gnawed at her relentlessly, twisting her thoughts into spirals of doubt. If only I had been braver, she thought. Maybe things wouldn't have ended this way. But deep down, she knew it wasn't just bravery that was needed. It was truth, and truth came with a price. The memory of the confrontation with the bikers haunted her. The harsh words, the cold eyes that promised pain for anyone who dared defy them. She saw herself frozen, the urge to scream stifled by fear. She wanted to run, to hide, but the anger simmered beneath her skin, fueling a quiet determination. "I won't let them erase him," she vowed silently, fingers clenching the worn fabric of her shirt. Every breath was a battle between fear and resolve. Her thoughts drifted to the nights spent pacing the floor, wrestling with the choice to speak out or stay safe. The voices of friends and family echoed in her mind, urging caution, warning her to stay quiet for her own good. But Emily's heart rebelled against their silence. "They don't understand," she mused. "If I keep quiet, I become part of their story, their lie." The internal struggle was exhausting, but with each passing day, the scales tipped closer to action. She recalled a moment alone with her mother, the unspoken grief hanging between them like a fragile thread. Neither could voice the pain, but in the shared silence, Emily felt a deep loneliness, a distance forged by fear and loss. "We're both prisoners," she thought bitterly, trapped by what we can't say. The memory stung, but also strengthened her resolve to break the cycle of silence no matter the cost. As the flashback faded, Emily's gaze hardened. The internal monologue shifted from doubt to determination. "I am the voice now," she declared, quietly. "If they won't speak, I will." Her mind cleared, purpose blazing like a torch in the darkness. The battle ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and sacrifice, but Emily was ready to face it. For Jason, for herself, and for a truth that refused to be buried. Emily's chest tightened as the flood of memories overwhelmed her, tears welling up despite her desperate attempts to hold them back. Her hands trembled uncontrollably, fingers curling into fists to steady the shaking. She forced a smile, brittle and fragile, like a cracked mask barely holding together the storm beneath. The room felt suffocating, walls closing in with every shallow breath she took, yet she kept her face calm, a silent promise to the world that she was still standing. Her lips quivered as she wiped away a tear that slipped free, afraid anyone might see the fracture in her armor. The trembling spread to her legs, and she sat down slowly, head bowed, trying to will the emotions back into hiding. But the ache in her heart was too raw, too heavy to be silenced by mere control. Her body betrayed her resolve, shaking with a mixture of fear, grief, and simmering anger that refused to be quelled. When her mother knocked softly and peeked in, Emily plastered on another fake smile, forcing warmth into her voice. "I'm fine," she said, voice barely above a whisper. But the quiver betrayed her, and her mother's eyes softened with a knowing sadness. Emily hated the pity that followed. It felt like another kind of silence, a refusal to truly see her pain. Yet she clung to that smile, fragile as it was. because it was the only thing between her and the chaos swirling inside. Even as she sat alone later, the tears returned in silent waves, each one a small rebellion against the stoic facade she wore during the day. Her body shook with the effort to hold herself together, but in those private moments, the mask slipped, and raw emotion poured out. It was exhausting, the physical toll of grief, fear, and determination all tangled together in a battle she couldn't afford to lose. Emily's trembling hands reached for the journal, her only refuge, and she pressed the pen to paper, each word a release. The fake smiles, the forced calm, the silent tears, they all lived in her writing now, a testament to the truth beneath the surface. She knew she couldn't hide forever. The pain was real, the fear was real, and the fight was just beginning. Emily's footsteps echoed softly against the cracked pavement as she made her way toward the abandoned warehouse at the edge of town. The setting sun cast long shadows that twisted like whispers, hiding secrets the town desperately wanted to forget. She clutched a folded note in her hand, the one with the cryptic message, "The truth rides with the fearless." Each word burned in her mind, urging her forward despite the knot of anxiety tightening in her stomach. The warehouse door creaked open with a reluctant groan, revealing darkness thick enough to swallow sound. Emily's breath caught, but she stepped inside, eyes adjusting to the dimness. Scattered papers littered the floor, and faint markings on the walls hinted at hurried plans and coded warnings. This was a place where truths were born and buried, a crossroads between fear and courage. Suddenly, a noise, a soft shuffle from the shadows. Emily froze, heart pounding, every nerve alert. A figure emerged, cloaked in a leather jacket, face obscured by the fading light. "You're braver than I thought," the voice said, low and cautious. "But bravery alone won't keep you safe." Emily swallowed her fear, gripping the note tighter. "I'm not here to run," she replied, voice steady despite the tremor beneath. The stranger nodded slowly, stepping closer. "Then listen carefully. What you're chasing is bigger than you realize. The bikers, the silence, they're just the surface." He pulled from his jacket a battered ledger, worn and stained, pages filled with names, dates, and locations. This is the real map. Their secrets, their deals, their betrayals, and it's why your brother had to be silenced. Emily reached out, fingertips brushing the ledger's cover, feeling the weight of years of danger and deceit. "Why show me this?" she asked. "Because you have to finish what he started, because the town won't speak, but the ledger never lies." A sudden crash echoed from the warehouse entrance, footsteps pounding, voices shouting. The stranger's eyes hardened. "They know you're here. You have to disappear. But take this." He pressed the ledger into her hands, and before she could ask more, he vanished into the shadows. Emily's pulse raced, every instinct screaming to flee, but also to fight. As she slipped out the back, the weight of the ledger felt heavier than ever, a burden and a beacon. The mystery deepened, the stakes rising with every breath. The silence of Spring Hill was breaking, and Emily was the spark. Emily's fingers hovered over the cryptic symbol, tracing its delicate curves again and again. The more she studied it, the more it seemed to pulse with hidden meaning, like a silent code waiting to be unlocked. She pulled out an old notebook Jason had left behind, filled with sketches, notes, and fragments of conversations she hadn't fully understood before. There, etched faintly on the back page, was the same symbol, accompanied by a hastily scribbled phrase, "Follow the chain where the iron meets the river." Her heart quickened. The iron, the river, was it a location? A secret meeting place? Emily's mind raced through every corner of Spring Hill, every place Jason had mentioned or avoided. The old railway bridge came to mind, a rusted structure spanning the cold, fast-moving river on the edge of town. It was a place people rarely visited, whispered about in rumors, but avoided in daylight. Could this be where the next clue waited? Determined, Emily grabbed her jacket and headed out, the weight of the ledger and the note pressing against her side. The air was thick with tension, every step echoing the urgency she felt inside. As she approached the bridge, the sun dipped low, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the ground. The sound of water rushing beneath was steady, a cold reminder that time was slipping away. Beneath the bridge's rusted beams, Emily's eyes caught a glint. A small, weathered chain looped around a beam, its links worn but unbroken. Her pulse throbbed as she reached out, fingers brushing the cold metal. Attached to the chain was a small rusted key tied with a faded ribbon. Her breath caught. This was more than a clue. It was an invitation to uncover the secrets Jason had died protecting. Her mind flooded with questions. What lock did this key open? Was it a door, a box, or something more dangerous? Emily's instincts screamed caution, but her heart burned with the need to know. She tucked the key safely into her pocket, the cold metal a reminder that the past was never truly buried. As she turned to leave, a shadow flickered at the edge of her vision, a silent watcher disappearing into the twilight. Emily swallowed her fear, knowing the deeper she went, the darker the secrets would become. But she was ready. For Jason. For justice. For the truth that refused to stay hidden. Emily's fingers curled tightly around the rusted key. Its cold weight anchoring her to a promise she barely understood but could not ignore. As she stepped away from the bridge, a chill wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it a faint, almost imperceptible sound, like the distant growl of engines. Rumbling in the night, her skin prickled with unease. It was as if the town itself was warning her. The deeper you dig, the darker it gets. She glanced back once, the bridge now swallowed by shadows, its secrets hidden beneath layers of rust and silence. Somewhere in the distance, a lone motorcycle's headlights flickered briefly, then vanished, swallowed by the twisting roads that led out of Spring Hill. Emily's heart skipped. That fleeting glimpse was no accident. It was a signal, a reminder that eyes were watching, waiting. As she walked home, the key nestled against her side, Emily's thoughts churned. The ledger, the symbol, the key, they were all pieces of a puzzle crafted by someone who wanted her involved, but the stakes were higher than she had imagined. She remembered Jason's warning words echoing in her mind. Trust no one, Em, not even those who seem closest. A sudden noise, a branch snapping behind her, made her spin around, eyes wide, searching the dark. Nothing but shadows and silence. But the fear lingered, a cold seed planted deep within her. This was no longer just a quest for truth. It was a battle for survival. The night held dangers waiting to strike, and Emily was standing right in the middle of the storm. The key was more than metal and rust. It was a doorway. And on the other side waited answers that could shatter everything she thought she knew. But with every step closer, the danger grew, and Emily sensed that the bikers and the town itself would not let the past stay buried without a fight. The night air was thick with tension as Emily returned home, clutching the rusted key like a lifeline. She thought she had braced herself for every possibility. The threats, the silence, the shadows watching from dark corners. But nothing could have prepared her for what came next. Just as she reached her front door, a soft knock echoed through the stillness. Her heart leapt, but the face that appeared in the doorway was not the expected stranger or threat. It was Sarah, Jason's closest friend, someone Emily hadn't seen since the funeral. Her eyes were wide, frantic, but filled with a fierce determination. "I've been trying to find you," Sarah whispered urgently, glancing over her shoulder as if pursued by ghosts. "There's something you need to know. Something Jason left behind. Something he never told anyone. It changes everything." Emily's breath caught. She had been alone in this fight, or so she thought. Now, suddenly, the pieces were shifting, in ways no one could have foreseen. Sarah stepped inside, closing the door softly behind her. "What no one expected," Sarah said, "is that Jason wasn't just a victim. He was part of something bigger. And they're still watching. But he trusted you, Emily. He left clues because he believed you could finish what he started. The room seemed to shrink around them as the weight of the revelation settled in. The fight was no longer just about survival. It was about uncovering a truth so deep, so dangerous. It threatened to unravel everything Emily thought she knew about her brother, the town, and herself. Emily's grip tightened on the key. The path ahead was darker and more uncertain than ever. But one thing was clear: this was only the beginning. The moment Sarah closed the door behind her, a sudden knock echoed sharply from the front porch. Both women froze, exchanging a quick, tense glance. Emily's heart hammered wildly, every instinct screaming that danger was closer than ever. "Who could that be at this hour?" Sarah whispered, voice barely audible. Before Emily could answer, the knock came again, louder, more urgent. Emily moved cautiously toward the window, peering out through the cracked curtain. Standing there was a man, face shadowed beneath a worn leather cap, eyes scanning the house with an unsettling intensity. He held something in his hand, a folded envelope worn at the edges but sealed with a deep red wax stamp. Emily's breath caught. "It's a message," she said, voice trembling. "From them." Sarah's eyes darkened. "They're warning us, or worse, testing how far we'll go." With a silent nod, Emily opened the door just enough to slip the envelope inside without revealing herself. The man didn't wait. He disappeared into the night like a ghost, leaving only the echo of his footsteps behind. As the door clicked shut, Emily broke the seal, unfolding the letter with trembling hands. The message inside was brief but chilling. "Stop digging or lose everything." No signature, no clues, just a warning carved from menace and shadow. Sarah's gaze met Emily's, fierce and unyielding. "They want us scared, but we're already past fear." Suddenly the lights flickered, plunging the room into darkness for a breathless moment. When they returned, Emily noticed something new. A small slip of paper pinned beneath the envelope, bearing a single word. Trust. Her mind raced. Who was this message from? Was it a threat or an offer? The line between friend and foe blurred dangerously. Emily swallowed hard, knowing the deeper she went, the more treacherous the path. The bikers weren't just opponents. They were shadows lurking in every corner, ready to strike. The morning. Sun filtered weakly through the cracked blinds as Emily sat at the edge of her bed, the letter still clenched tightly in her hand. The word trust burned on her mind like a brand, both a warning and a puzzle she couldn't ignore. She knew the world around her was shifting, silent eyes watching, shadows moving just beyond reach. But for the first time, there was a flicker of clarity amid the chaos. Determined to uncover the truth, Emily began to prepare. She packed a small bag with essentials: her brother's ledger, the rusted key, a flashlight, and her phone, loaded with contacts she hoped she could still trust. Every item was a piece of her battle plan, a shield against the unknown. Outside, the town of Spring Hill bustled unaware, the calm before a storm that no one saw coming. The streets were filled with familiar faces, but Emily knew that beneath the surface, secrets festered like wounds waiting to reopen. Today, she would take the first step into that darkness, armed with nothing but courage and a growing sense of purpose. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. It read, "Meet me where the river bends at midnight, alone." The cryptic summons sent a shiver down her spine. Was this a trap, or the lead she had been waiting for? Emily took a deep breath, steadying herself. Whatever lay ahead, she was ready to face it. The truth was calling, and she wouldn't turn away. Emily sat on the edge of her bed, the weight of the letter pressing heavily in her palm. Her mind raced, each thought a jagged shard slicing through the fog of uncertainty. Trust, a simple word, yet tangled with danger and doubt. Who could she trust when shadows lurked in every corner? Was this message a lifeline or a trap set to snare her? Her heart pounded fiercely, a wild rhythm of hope and fear. She pictured Jason's face, steady and resolute even in his final moments, and the fire in his eyes that had sparked her own courage. He believed in me. I can't let him down. The ledger, the key, the cryptic note. They weren't just objects. They were pieces of a story that only she could finish. But doubt gnawed at her. What if I'm walking into a nightmare? What if every step forward pulls me deeper into danger? The flicker of fear threatened to overwhelm her, but she clenched, her jaw steeling herself. Fear won't save me, only action will. Across town, Sarah paced restlessly, her thoughts tangled with worry and fierce determination. Emily is the only one who can do this. But how do I protect her when the enemy is invisible? She replayed every moment since Jason's death, every secret he'd shared in whispers. I have to be strong. For her. For Jason's memory. The clock ticked louder, marking time slipping away. Midnight summons loomed like a challenge, a test of trust and bravery. Both women were caught in a web of secrets and lies, their minds locked in silent battle with the unknown. In that moment, their fears, hopes, and resolve converged, a fragile but unbreakable bond forged in the fire of truth and survival. The night was thick with tension as Emily approached the river bend, the only sound the crunch of her footsteps on the gravel path. The moon hung low, casting ghostly reflections on the water's surface, and every shadow seemed to twitch with hidden movement. Her heart hammered, each beat a thunderclap in the stillness. She clutched the rusted key tightly, the ledger tucked, safely in her bag, every sense alert. This was the moment, the meeting that could change everything. The air was heavy with expectation, a silent promise of revelation or betrayal. Then, from the darkness, a figure stepped forward, familiar, yet changed. It was Marcus, Jason's closest friend and one of the few Emily had trusted. His eyes were sharp, but his face bore the weight of secrets long kept. "You came," he said quietly, voice edged with relief and caution. Emily nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I had to." Marcus reached into his coat and pulled out a small, weathered box. "Jason left this for you. It's the final piece, proof of everything, but it's dangerous. You're not the only one searching." Her hands trembled as she took the box, feeling the cold metal against her skin. The moment was thick with meaning, a buildup of months of fear, hope, and relentless pursuit. As Marcus spoke of betrayals and hidden alliances, Emily realized the truth was deeper and darker than she had imagined. The bikers were just one thread, in a vast web of lies, and she was at its center. The moment Emily lifted the lid of the weathered box, a chill swept through her bones. Inside lay a collection of faded photographs, handwritten letters, and a small flash drive. The tangible proof Jason had risked everything to protect. Her fingers trembled as she sifted through the memories captured in ink and pixel, each piece a shard of truth cutting through years of silence. But then, a sudden noise shattered the fragile quiet. A metallic click followed by the unmistakable rev of a motorcycle engine roaring to life in the distance. Emily's breath hitched, panic flashing in her eyes. They weren't alone. Marcus's voice was sharp, urgent. "They found us. We have to move. Now." Heart pounding, Emily grabbed the flash drive and the letters, stuffing them into her jacket. Together, they bolted from the riverbank, shadows chasing their every step. The cold night air bit at their faces, but adrenaline burned hotter, fueling a desperate sprint through twisting paths and broken streets. Behind them, the snarling engines drew closer, a thunderous reminder that the past wasn't ready to let go. Every heartbeat was a countdown, escape or capture, truth or silence. As they vanished into the darkness, Emily knew one thing with certainty. The impact of this moment would echo forever. The truth was no longer hidden, and now it demanded a reckoning. The narrow alleyway swallowed their hurried footsteps as Emily and Marcus darted through the maze of Spring Hill's forgotten streets. Every shadow seemed alive, every distant roar of engines a looming threat, Emily's lungs burned, but the weight of the flash drive in her jacket was a relentless reminder. This was no ordinary chase. This was a fight for truth, for justice, for survival. Suddenly, a sharp turn brought them face to face with a dead end, an old brick wall covered in peeling graffiti. Marcus slammed his palm against the wall, eyes scanning desperately. "We're trapped," he muttered, breath ragged. "They're closing in fast." Emily's mind raced. Ahead, a narrow fire escape ladder dangled just out of reach. Without thinking, she grabbed Marcus's arm, pulling him toward the ladder. "Up there," she urged, adrenaline sharpening every sense. As they scrambled up, the roar of motorcycles grew deafening below. The bikers had them cornered, no doubt about it. But Emily's fingers gripped the cold metal ladder with fierce determination. At the top, a small rooftop overlooked the town, an uncertain sanctuary but better than capture. Breathing heavily, they crouched behind a vent, watching as figures below circled, engines idling, searching for any sign of their prey. Marcus glanced at Emily, eyes dark but resolute. "This changes everything," he said quietly. "They're not just after Jason's secrets. They want to silence you too." Emily swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the moment settle deep in her bones. The line had been crossed. She was no longer just a seeker of truth, she was a target. Emily's gaze hardened as she stared out over the darkened town from the rooftop's edge. The cool night air mixed with the weight of her resolve. There was no turning back now. Her goal was clear: to expose the truth behind Jason's death and bring justice to the shadows that had haunted Spring Hill for far too long. She clutched the flash drive tightly, knowing it held the evidence that could dismantle the bikers' dangerous empire. But more than that, it was a symbol of hope. A chance to heal wounds left open by years of silence and fear. Every secret uncovered, every betrayal revealed, would inch her closer to freeing not just herself, but the entire town trapped under the biker's shadow. Emily knew the path ahead would be perilous, filled with deception, danger, and heartbreak. Yet her heart burned with fierce determination. "I will finish what Jason started," she whispered to the night, voice steady but fierce. No matter the cost. The night stretched endlessly before her, a battlefield waiting to be claimed. And Emily was ready to fight. Emily's breath hitched as she faced Marcus beneath the flickering street lamp, the weight of the night pressing down like a storm about to break. The truth they'd uncovered was heavier than either of them had imagined. A web of lies twisting through the town's very core, binding friend and foe alike. Her hands trembled, clutching the flash drive as memories flooded in. Jason's steady smile, the secrets he'd trusted her with, and the price he had paid. "I thought I knew who I could trust," she whispered, voice breaking. But everyone was hiding something. Marcus's eyes softened, shadows flickering in their depths. "Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones we should fear the most." Tears welled up, blurring her vision, but Emily blinked them away, her resolve hardening. "I can't let his death be for nothing. I have to keep fighting. For him, for this town." In that moment, beneath the cold light and endless night, Emily realized the truth wasn't just about betrayal or secrets. It was about courage. The courage to stand alone when everything else falls apart. Her heart ached, but her spirit burned brighter than ever. Emily sank against the cold brick wall, the weight of everything crashing down like a tidal wave. Her hands shook uncontrollably as the tears she had held back finally spilled free, carving silent trails down her cheeks. The flash drive felt heavy in her pocket, not just with secrets, but with the burden of a truth too vast to carry alone. Memories of Jason's laughter, his warnings, and the promises she'd made collided in her mind, blurring into a storm of grief and determination. The loneliness of the fight pressed in, suffocating and relentless. For a moment, the fierce warrior within her faltered, cracked by the overwhelming pain. But as the night stretched endlessly, a flicker of light pierced the darkness. Emily wiped her tears, took a shaky breath, and forced herself to stand. She wasn't just fighting for answers anymore. She was fighting to survive, to protect the memory of those she loved, and to bring light to a town swallowed by shadows. Just as the night seemed its darkest, Emily's phone buzzed softly in her trembling hand. A message appeared on the screen from an unknown number. "You're not alone. Meet me at the old chapel at dawn. Come with no one else." Her heart fluttered with a fragile hope. After all the fear and betrayal, this unexpected invitation felt like a lifeline thrown into the storm. Could there really be someone out there willing to help? The town had been swallowed by secrets, but maybe, just maybe, there was a spark of light left in the darkness. Emily stared out into the night sky, letting the quiet promise of dawn wash over her. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to believe that help was possible, that she didn't have to carry this burden alone. Emily stood beneath the pale light of the old chapel, the first rays of dawn breaking through the stained glass windows. The cold night had tested her resolve, but now something deeper stirred within her. A shift from burning revenge to quiet compassion. She thought of Jason, not just as the brother taken too soon, but as a person who believed in healing, in breaking cycles of violence rather than fueling them. The flash drive in her hand wasn't just evidence. It was a chance to change the story, to bring light without becoming the darkness she fought against. Marcus stepped beside her, sensing the change. "What now?" he asked softly. Emily met his gaze, her voice steady but gentle. "We expose the truth, yes, but we also give people a chance to heal, to rebuild. Revenge only breeds more pain. Compassion, maybe that's the real power Jason wanted us to find." The weight of anger began to lift, replaced by a fierce hope. The fight wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about breaking free. Emily stood at the edge of the river. As the sun rose higher, its golden light casting warmth over the scars that Spring Hill had long carried. The town was still fragile, tangled in the shadows of its past. But in that moment, Emily felt a quiet peace settle within her. Her journey had been brutal, marked by loss, fear, and the weight of secrets. But now the goal was clear: healing and understanding. Not just for herself, but for everyone touched by the darkness. She thought of Jason's smile, the hope he'd carried even in his darkest days, and she promised herself she would honor that by helping the town heal, not tear it apart. The flash. Drive's secrets would be revealed, but with care and compassion, giving people the chance to confront truth without shattering what remained. Emily took a deep breath, feeling the cool river breeze fill her lungs. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, it felt possible. Healing could begin, not just in Spring Hill, but in her own heart. Just as Emily began to believe the worst was behind her, a sudden knock echoed sharply at the chapel door. She opened it to find an old woman standing there, eyes gleaming with a strange knowing. "You don't know the full story," the woman whispered, her voice trembling but firm. Jason wasn't just a victim. He was part of something far bigger. Emily's heart pounded as the woman stepped inside, revealing a faded photograph of Jason standing alongside the very bikers Emily had sworn to expose. They weren't enemies at first, she said, but alliances broke, and secrets buried deep began to unravel. The room seemed to shrink as Emily processed the revelation. The man she had mourned and fought for was tangled in the shadows. She sought to unravel, caught between loyalty and betrayal in ways she never imagined. This hidden truth shattered everything she thought she knew. The fight for justice was no longer black and white. It was a maze of gray, and Emily had to navigate it carefully, or risk losing everything. The old chapel's wooden doors creaked shut behind them, sealing Emily and the mysterious woman away from the cold night and the dangers lurking outside. Inside, the flickering candlelight cast soft shadows on the worn stone walls, creating a fragile sanctuary amid the chaos. Emily sank onto a creaky wooden bench, exhaustion and tension washing over her like a tidal wave. The woman, whose name was Grace, moved quietly to light another candle, her calm presence a steady anchor in the storm. "This place has protected many before you," Grace said softly, her voice gentle but firm. "Here, you can breathe, think, and plan. You're not alone anymore." For the first time in weeks, Emily allowed herself to relax, feeling the heavy weight of fear ease just a little. The chapel wasn't just a building, it was a refuge, a safe space where she could gather strength before stepping back into the fight. As dawn's light filtered through the stained glass, Emily felt a fragile hope bloom within her. Proof that, even in darkness, safety and support could be found. Grace looked deeply into Emily's eyes, her voice calm but resolute. "You're carrying so much pain, but remember this: kindness can break chains that anger never will." Emily's fists clenched, the urge for revenge still simmering beneath the surface. But as Grace spoke, a new understanding began to take root. The bikers, the betrayals, the secrets, they were all tangled in fear and hurt, just like her. What if, instead of fueling the cycle with hatred, she chose to reach out with empathy, to see the brokenness behind the violence? Emily took a slow, steady breath. "Maybe that's the real strength," she whispered. "Not to destroy, but to heal." Grace nodded, a gentle smile softening her features. Power doesn't always come from fighting harder. Sometimes it comes from forgiving and understanding. Emily sat alone on the chapel's worn wooden bench, the flickering candlelight casting long shadows that danced across the stone walls. Her mind was a storm of conflicting emotions: justice versus mercy, truth versus peace, revenge versus forgiveness. Each choice seemed to pull her in a different direction, leaving her feeling lost and fractured. She clutched the flash drive tightly, the weight of Jason's secrets heavy in her hands. Could she expose everything, risking more pain and chaos? Or was there a way to protect those she cared about while still honoring the truth? The faces of those she'd met, the bikers, the townsfolk, even Marcus, flashed through her mind, each with their own tangled stories and motives. Could she condemn them all? Were they merely victims of their own desperation? Tears welled up as the internal conflict deepened. The line between right and wrong blurred until it seemed impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. Emily whispered into the silence, "How do I choose the right path when every option feels wrong?" Emily's footsteps echoed softly against the cracked pavement as she approached the abandoned warehouse on the edge of town. The night air was thick with unease, every shadow whispering secrets she wasn't sure she wanted to hear. Clutching the flash drive tighter, she felt the weight of the past pressing down, secrets waiting to explode, truths begging to be heard. Suddenly, a distant engine roar shattered the silence, sending a cold shiver down her spine. She wasn't alone. Heart pounding, Emily stepped inside, the creaking door sealing her fate as the darkness closed in around her. Emily stepped forward cautiously, her eyes meeting those of the biker leader, whose hardened face softened for the first time in weeks. "We don't have to keep fighting," he said quietly, voice rough but sincere. "There's a way out, if you're willing to listen." The tension hung thick between them, but beneath it, a fragile hope flickered. Emily lowered her guard, slightly realizing that sometimes the strongest battles are won not with weapons, but with offers of peace. Emily's mind drifted back to a summer afternoon years ago, the sun casting warm golden hues over the quiet streets of Spring Hill. She was younger then, laughter bubbling freely as she raced down the old dirt road on her battered bike, the wind whipping through her hair. Jason was right behind her, his steady voice calling encouragement as they chased freedom on two wheels, dreams as wide as the sky above. She remembered the way Jason's eyes sparkled with hope, his unwavering belief that they could escape the shadows that hung over their town. His words echoed in her heart now. "We're stronger than this place, Em. We just have to hold on." But those days felt like a lifetime ago. The laughter faded into silence, replaced by whispers of betrayal and loss. She recalled the night. Everything changed. The sound of screeching tires, the flash of headlights, the helpless scream that tore through the darkness. Her memories were a tangled web of love and pain, of moments stolen and promises broken. She saw Jason's face in every shadow, felt his presence in every silent corner. The weight of those memories pressed down, fueling her determination to uncover the truth and find peace, for him and for herself. As the past and present collided, Emily steeled herself for the path ahead, knowing that the ghost she carried would either break her or make her stronger. Emily stood alone beneath the pale glow of the street lamp, the night air cool against her flushed skin. Forgiveness felt like a distant dream, an impossible mountain towering above the ruins of her trust. The memories of betrayal cut deep, each one a jagged shard she struggled to remove from her heart. How could she forgive those who had turned their backs on Jason? Those who had hidden truths, let darkness fester, and watched as the town suffered? The weight of anger and pain threatened to consume her, pushing her toward a path of vengeance. But deep inside, a small voice whispered, could forgiveness be the key to breaking the cycle? Could accepting the past, flawed as it was, free her from the chains of bitterness? Emily's breath hitched as tears welled up, her fists clenched tightly. The struggle was fierce, a battle between heart and mind, between holding on and letting go. The old clock tower chimed midnight as Emily slipped silently through the deserted streets, every nerve on edge. Somewhere in the shadows, a figure watched. Her, waiting, calculating. The flash drive in her pocket burned like a secret too dangerous to hold. With each step, the line between hunter and hunted blurred, and Emily knew this night could change everything. Or end it all. Emily's hands trembled as she inserted the flash drive into her laptop, the screen flickering to life with files that held more than just evidence. They held confessions, hidden alliances, and betrayals that cut deeper than she ever imagined. Her breath caught as a video began to play, revealing Jason not just as a victim, but as a reluctant participant caught in a web far darker than anyone knew. The faces she trusted flashed before her eyes. Friends, enemies, even Marcus, each tangled in secrets that blurred the lines between right and wrong. Tears streamed down her face, not just from shock, but from the painful release of truths long buried. In that moment of catharsis, Emily felt a strange peace settle within her, a release from the weight of illusion, and a fragile hope that understanding could rise from the ruins of deception. Emily stood at the edge of the crumbling pier, waves crashing violently beneath her, mirroring the storm raging inside her heart. Years of pain, betrayal, and silence erupted in a tidal wave of raw emotion, anger, sorrow, and desperation colliding all at once. Her voice cracked as she shouted into the night, tears streaming freely, the weight of every broken promise and shattered trust pouring out in a fierce, uncontrollable release. The fury that had simmered beneath her skin now burned bright and fierce. But beneath it all, a flicker of hope remained, a stubborn ember refusing to be snuffed out. In that moment, Emily wasn't just breaking down, she was breaking free. Shadow stepped forward from the darkness, and Emily's breath caught as she recognized the familiar figure of Lena, the biker who had always seemed distant and cold. "You don't have to do this alone," Lena said quietly, her voice steady but filled with something Emily hadn't expected, genuine concern. "I've seen the truth too, and I want to help." Emily stared, disbelief and relief warring inside her. For the first time, she realized that help could come from the most unlikely places, and maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as alone as she thought. Emily sat alone in the dim light of the chapel, the worn wooden table before her cluttered with old photographs and a small tape recorder. Her fingers trembled as she pressed play, the crackling voice filling the silence with a confession that would change everything. "This is Jason." The recording began, his voice steady but tinged with regret. "If you're hearing this, it means I'm gone. But there's something you need to know. The bikers, they weren't just enemies. They were family once. I made mistakes, big ones, that tore us apart. I tried to protect you, protect all of us, but it wasn't enough." Emily's eyes scanned the photos scattered across the table. Images of Jason laughing with the very men she had feared, their faces warm and familiar in a way that contradicted the stories she had heard. The tape continued, revealing secret meetings, threats, and a plan gone horribly wrong. Jason's voice faltered as he confessed to trusting the wrong people and the consequences that followed. Tears streamed down Emily's face as the truth unfolded, a tangled web of loyalty, betrayal, and love that no one in Spring Hill had been ready to face. The photos and the tape were more than evidence. They were a bridge to understanding, a chance to heal the wounds hidden beneath years of silence. As the recording ended, Emily felt the weight in her hands lighten, replaced by a fierce determination to honor Jason's story, not with anger, but with truth. Emily's knees gave way as the weight of the truth crashed over her like a relentless wave. Tears streamed down her cheeks, blurring the faces in the photographs scattered before her. Her breath hitched, chest tightening as the years of pain, loss, and unanswered questions poured out in sobs she could no longer hold back. The chapel walls seemed to close in, the flickering candlelight casting shadows that danced with her grief. Every secret unveiled, every betrayal confessed, shattered the fragile strength she had clung to. She curled into herself, trembling, broken but finally released. Her collapse not a defeat, but a surrender to the healing she so desperately needed. Emily's knees gave way as the weight of the truth crashed over her like a relentless wave. Tears streamed down her cheeks, blurring the faces in the photographs scattered before her. Her breath hitched, chest tightening as the years of pain, loss, and unanswered questions poured out in sobs she could no longer hold back. The chapel walls seemed to close in, the flickering candlelight casting shadows that danced with her grief. Every secret unveiled, every betrayal confessed, shattered the fragile strength she had clung to. She curled into herself, trembling, broken but finally released. Her collapse, not a defeat, but a surrender to the healing she so desperately needed. Emily stood beneath the bright morning sun, the weight of the past finally lifted from her shoulders. The town of Spring Hill, once shadowed by secrets and pain, now breathed with a fragile but growing hope. She had faced the darkness, uncovered the truth, and chosen forgiveness over hatred. The chapel doors behind her stood open, welcoming those who sought peace and healing. Marcus approached, offering a tentative smile, a silent promise of unity and understanding.